Welcome back to the Mike Huckabee Show. July the 1st at 4 in the afternoon, Arizona time. There's going to be a hearing that'll be held to get some insight from Arizona residents regarding not only the IRS scandal and the overreach of the EPA. I don't know how long they've scheduled this thing for, but that could go on for hours. Joining me now is Congressman Paul Gosar of the 4th Congressional District of Arizona. Congressman, it's good to have you here today, and delighted to hear about the forum that you've got planned.
Oh, thank you, Governor Huckabee, and we intend to be there. If we got to bring food and drink for everybody, we will take their information and their stories as long as it takes.
Well, and I know that you've got Congressman Franks that'll be with you, and Congressman Schweikert, and I believe Congressman Matt Salmon will also be a part of the hearing. It's going to be at the Davis Learning Center Auditorium at the campus of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Prescott, Arizona. Let's talk about why do you need to have this? Because, I mean, it may be an Arizona thing, but it's really a national issue. The fact that the IRS and the EPA, people just don't trust their government right now.
They don't. We constantly see this administration with a constantly changing narrative. How many times are we talking about a different narrative coming out about the abuses? What I'm doing is running to the fight, and what I'm trying to do is get all those folks, those constituents, those voters who have been victimized by this government and hear their real stories. That's what we want to do, is we want to have a summary of getting all those personal stories and add details that they can't dispute.
You know, there are so many reports of members of Congress who avoid things like a public hearing and avoid town hall meetings because they're afraid they're going to be confronted with constituents who are angry. You've actually taken the initiative in saying, I want to hear from the folks. Why aren't you afraid of the people?
Well, Governor Huckabee, I'm a dentist impersonating a politician, and so we got a sick patient, and what we want to hear is from our patients. And so the first thing in my nature is, what hurts and how can I help you? And the only way you can do that is by listening to people and getting them involved, running to the fight.
When you have the hearing, my guess is you're going to get an earful, particularly about the Internal Revenue Service, not just people who have been investigated and criminally abused by the IRS, but people who just find the whole system to be unwieldy, completely illogical, and impossible to understand.
You're exactly right, and that's what we want to hear about. We want to hear about a system gone awry. What we need reforms, and that's why I was elected in 2010, was to come here and fix things, reform things, not having the status quo. But we want to hear them because this is their government, and they need to be empowered to take it back.
You mentioned that you're a dentist by profession. You know, one of the things that I always find fascinating is what caused people who were successful in their careers, who didn't really need to run for Congress because they were looking for a job. In many cases, people actually take a pay cut to go to Congress. What was it that made you just sit down one night with your wife and say, I am going to Congress?
Well, it was actually patients, Governor Huckabee, that they came forward because I was engaged in politics and health care reform prior to Obamacare. I knew that we needed type of health care reform, but parts of what the government was trying to do derailed and smeared that patient-friendly, patient type of application of way healthcare should be. And so, being somebody that always put something on the table, people gravitated to that and said, would you be interested in running? And I talked with my better half, and we came up with the idea, let's try. And this is what happens when you go to dinner with some patients.
I'm visiting with Congressman Paul Gosar of Arizona. What's the biggest surprise you've had when you got to Congress?
How dysfunctional it really is.
Just really, it's as bad as we think it is, isn't it?
It is, and what you have is the polarization that, we have big boys and girls that won't admit what's not working and that truly don't want to see reform. You have the enlargement of the fourth part of government, the bureaucracies that has no oversight. You're seeing an administration that, from Fast and Furious to the EPA to the IRS to the Associated Press, hiding behind the law, when it's the very same law that if I were to do that, or any Main Street American, they'd be in jail, locked up with a key gone. And that's I kind of quote James Madison: "If men were angels, no government would be necessary." But I think that this administration should have a theme song from the Greg Allman Band. There are no angels, or I am no angel, and they ought to be playing that everywhere they go.
And I think the founders had a healthy skepticism of government because they had a healthy reality about human nature. They understood that people are broken creatures and left to themselves will do terrible things. And that doesn't make me a pessimist. I believe in redemption, and I'm a Christian. I get it that we can reform. But even then, I believe with all my heart that what you have to have is a real careful level of accountability, because all of us, I don't care who we are subject to corruption if we're not held in the middle of the spotlight. I
would agree with you full-heartedly. I've said over and over again, what we've done when times were fat and sassy, we allowed bureaucrats to take little bits of our freedoms a little bit at a time, and now we find ourselves with a group that's out of Chicago that does it professionally. We're all responsible, and we have to get this country back. We're going to have to storm it as the people, getting this government back and making them accountable. But that tells you it also has to be a dynamic, an ever-vigilant type of application of holding government accountable.
You serve on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, and one of the things your committee's been dealing with is the IRS abuses. I'm sure you've got constituents in the 4th District of Arizona who have come to you and said, Congressman, we've had an IRS application pending for, 2-3 years, and now we find out that there was targeting, even though that there was denials of it. Now, they've admitted there has been. But I was distressed last week to see the FBI director come out and, under questioning by Congressman Jordan of Ohio, he had no idea whether there was an investigation and who was leading it, and had any of the witnesses been interviewed. And I'm thinking, for an administration who promised to get to the bottom of it, they haven't even gotten to the top of it.
No, you're exactly right. When you look at a chief operating officer and how they delegate powers but hold people accountable, it was a disgusting answer. Here's something that is so egregious that has the very backbone of America scared to death, and you don't know who you put in charge and to be accountable to get things done and get to the bottom of something. It shows you that the narrative in this administration, as well as the government appointees, political appointees, have no regard for the American taxpayer or the American voter.
Do you think we'll get to the bottom of it? Will we find out and hold accountable the people at the IRS who shredded the constitutional rights of Americans?
I do, and I think that when people understand, they're scared by the IRS. They saw how overreaching they were with the AP scandal. But the IRS scares people, and when they start to put 2 and 2 together, that this is the same group of people that's going to be implementing Obamacare, that they're going to be getting more information from the assisters and navigators that are going to talk about your personal life, your health history into a national data bank. This spooks them, and I do believe in all my heart and soul that that's what we have to drive for, is make people accountable. What we're seeing is actually this administration hiding behind the law. But the law eventually will catch up with you, and I think you're starting to see that. But it also regards to me, Governor Huckabee, that we also have to have political appointees being held by the same letter of the law of accountability. That's why I got a resolution of no confidence in the Attorney General of the United States. They've lost respect for him. He does not respect the rule of law. He plays the game on the respect of law. We need an Attorney General who is the Attorney General of law, not one of convenience.
Well, I think what you're doing with the forum is terrific. And again, at a time when so many members of Congress are running and hiding from their constituents, you're openly asking yours to show up, and you'll take questions and comments. So for the folks in Arizona, this is going to be July the 1st, 4 p.m. in the afternoon at the Davis Learning Center Auditorium on the campus of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Prescott, Arizona. May I encourage other members of Congress to do what Congressman Gosar and his colleagues from the Arizona delegation are doing. Congressman, before I let you go, this morning the Supreme Court handed down a very significant decision striking down your state's law regarding voter documentation. Did the ruling surprise you, and what kind of reaction are you hearing from your home state?
Well, I mean, they're disappointed. They cited the supremacy clause of the federal government over the states, and they bypassed, what would be legal documentation. I think that's what's eluding us is that, what is being dictated to the state in regards to voter safety. But then you have a federal government that fails to respond, particularly when you look at the Department of Justice under Eric Holder and how they have upheld or disdained certain groups' privileges over others. I think it's very disappointing, and it tells me that we really have to solve this process from the federal level in regards to either legislation or a national referendum.
Congressman, I appreciate your being here today, and again, I commend you for what you and your colleagues are doing, and I hope it's a big turnout, although I'm kind of guessing it will be.
We're trying to get that, if we can't get people, engaged on the 4th of July, the issue of freedom, don't tread on me as a taxpayer, as a voter, we can't get people rallied anywhere. And I just think this is going to be something that we can gravitate a groundswell and show people that they truly do have a viewpoint and a say in the way government will go on from here now.
Well, we'd love to get a report after the event and find out how it went, so we'll try to get back in touch with you.
Please do, and thank you so very much for keeping this in the spotlight.
Well, I appreciate you, and again, it's always refreshing to see a congressman wanting to be responsible, accountable, and answerable to the folks who elected him and whom he serves. Have a great week, and thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Governor Huckabee.
All right, that's Congressman Paul Gosar of Arizona, and gosh, it's good to hear what they're trying to do. And if you live in that area, I hope you will show up and be respectful.